You're in the middle of the learning process. So whenever you're learning a new skill, it gets almost to a saturation point. And then we start going backwards. With practice, there came a point where we started getting declining results. Past like 2.5, 3 hours of practice, we have to give it time to assess, make sense of what's going on, to do what we're asking it to do. It's gotta have time to grow those new neural pathways. We have got a killer topic today, one that I get asked actually quite a bit, and sometimes it comes up in different forms within drum lessons, whether that be individually with students or from a lot of the students in my online drum school. However it may come up, it comes up in different forms, but essentially it's why am I getting worse? I feel like I'm putting all this time into my practice, but why am I not improving? Not only am I not improving, why do I feel like I'm getting worse? There's a reason for this. There's actually 5 specific places where this can occur, and it's a natural thing within the process. Sometimes it's something you can do something about. Sometimes it's just we got to keep showing up and keep putting the work in. So that is what we're going to be talking about in the Drum Show podcast today. Welcome back. I'm Stephen Taylor, founder and owner of the Drum Better Daily program at stevensdrumshed.com. It's a drum school that I've run for 13 years now. We're going on our 14th year coming up. Started in 2011, and so I've been doing this a hot minute. And the great thing about my job, I'm also a professional drummer. I just came off the road for 1.5 years with the group, and I've been doing that since I was 15 professionally. And so teaching is something that is a very large part of my career as well. The great thing about running an online drum school for this long is I get a lot of contact with a lot of students every week, like tons of students every week. We have live calls every week. I get emails, the forums, messages from Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And so I want to dive into this and help you understand what is happening in the learning process and some things you can do to aid it, or just to give you an attaboy, just keep at it. It's going to get better. Okay, so there's 5 distinct areas where this can happen. And I was just talking to a student about this yesterday. Actually, and one of these areas was exactly what we were talking about. So the first one is you feel like your drumming is getting worse. So number 1 is you're in the middle of the learning process. Okay, so whenever you're learning a new skill, I wish I could tell you I know everything about why the brain does what it does. And we got a lot of studies on the brain. You've heard me talk a lot about the brain and the learning process and all of those things. But fact of the matter is, the brain's going to do what the brain's going to do. And it takes as long as it takes to learn something. I can't make that better for you. I can't make that go any faster. It just is. I mean, we can work in a more efficient manner. But one of the weird things about the brain is, it gets almost to a saturation point, and then we start going backwards with it, especially if there's actually a study that points this out. So you've heard me talk about the role of deliberate practice in the acquisition of expert performance. It's a big name. You can go download the study if you're just really interested in 40 pages that may make you go blind with boredom. But I think it's very interesting. And one of the things that you can piece out of there is that they found that with practice, there came a point where we started getting declining results. Past like 2.5, 3 hours of practice, we started seeing declining results. Not only did they plateau, things started to go backwards. We started to get worse. Why? Because our focus can't last forever. We get tired. We're human, right? And so at that point, like if you're seeing that in your practice time, it's like, okay, you may have been practicing this too long. Give it a break. Give yourself a rest. About 10%, 15% of what we do on the drums is actually in the practice room. The rest of that is recovery time. It's very similar to the gym. Our brain is very similar to muscles in our body. We have to give it time to assess, to assimilate, and to make sense of what's going on, to do what we're asking it to do. It's got to have time to grow those new neural pathways. So sometimes when we're in the middle of the learning process, let's just say 2 weeks ago you started on a new topic, it was going well, you started seeing some advances, so you started to see some of that beginner's, luck, where you're seeing these huge advances every day, you're punching the ceiling, going out like, man, it was awesome. And then we get to what we can call the dip. Right? Sometimes you get in a cul-de-sac and you're learning where you feel like you're just kind of going in circles. But sometimes there's a dip. There's this dip that goes down, and it's like, man, I was doing so good, and now it feels like I'm just in mud. And it feels like not only that, I feel like things are going backwards. Well, what is happening is your brain is trying to make sense of the things you are asking it to do. It is trying to do what you have asked it to do. And to do that, it has to take time and carve those new neural pathways. And sometimes that can cause some confusion during the learning process, and your brain takes it a little while to catch up with what you want it to do. Things you can do during that, a lot of studies I could point to, the one I just mentioned, several books I can point to that talk about this, but recovery time with learning, especially with our cognitive functions, attention, task management, those types of things, focus, our brain needs time to recover from those. As well, when we go to sleep, there's a great book called Why We Sleep. It talks a lot about what the brain does when we sleep. Certain areas of the brain that were asleep during the day become awake when we go to sleep. And essentially our brain keeps working. And they found that, in layman's terms, the brain started they saw the same brainwave patterns that were happening during that active working period or learning period. They see those when they go to sleep, only they're magnified. And your brain is essentially going through those in slow motion. It's like, hey guys, Steven's wanting to learn this thing on the drums. We got to figure this out. So when I go to sleep, it's like, okay, now we can finally get to work that he's out of the way. And it starts going to work. And what happens is it's learning that while you're sleeping, which is a really cool thing because you can feel great about sleeping. You can feel like it's improving your drumming. You can also feel great about eating. Eating is one of the best ways for us to recover too. You can feel great about recreational activities because that is also one of the recovery periods for us, is going and doing other things, finding things you enjoy, exercise, those types of things. Those all help us recover and learn in essence. And so what you can do is just give yourself some time and know that the brain is simply trying to make sense of it. And the way you can help the brain do that is give it some positive reinforcement. And what does that look like? In your practice time, that looks like you need to go through those exercises correctly. Your brain cares about correct repetitions. It does not care how long you practice. It cares that you did it correctly. It does not care that you did it 15 times and 14 of those times you did it wrong and one of those times you did it right. Guess what? You now have ingrained in your brain the wrong way to do it 14 times and the right way to do it once. So what do we need? We need more correct repetitions to reinforce for the brain, this is what I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn to do it this way. This is not that way I just did. That was wrong. Even giving yourself that feedback. I talk to myself sometimes. I go, no, that was incorrect. Your brain is listening. Your brain listens to those things. And they've done some fantastic studies before you go to sleep, focusing on things and focusing on the right thing versus the wrong thing. So that was the correct way to do it. And this was incorrect. And thinking about that correct way before you go to sleep, it's at top of the mind for your brain, and your brain goes, that's a priority. So that's one thing that can happen. And I wish I had a fix for that for you, but I don't. That's just kind of like, you got to just keep showing up, keep putting the work in, keep putting those correct repetitions, and you're going to find one day you wake up and you magically know how to do it. One day you ever had a problem and you wake up and you're like, oh, you magically have the answer. One day you quit practicing, you can't do it, and the next day you come in, you're like, oh, magically I'm better. One day, and we keep thinking, and I think our brain is like, it's not magic. We worked really hard all night. I think our brain is like, that problem you had all day yesterday, we worked really hard all night on that, and now you're saying it's magic. It's not. It is our brain doing what it does. So the first one there is you're in the middle of the learning process. Your brain needs time to carve those new neural pathways, and that can get kind of messy. It's kind of like a road that's under construction. It's like, which way do we go? One day you go through and they're like, oh no, we're detouring this way. Then the next day you go through, you're like, oh no, detouring this way. The next day it's like, can't come down this road at all. So it's in process. And that's a messy thing. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. The second thing is you're maturing as a player and your ears are maturing. We don't think about this very often. This is what I was talking to a student yesterday about. Fred, shout out to you, man. We've been talking about this. I've been working with Fred. I decided recently to take on 10 students as in a 12-week intensive course. I haven't taught one-on-one for a very long time, besides one-offs for, touring drums coming through town, things like that, just because I devote all of my time to my online students. And that takes up a lot of time with making lesson plans and assessing where they are and video reviews and weekly meetings with them and weekly live call. Like, it takes a lot of time. I'm pretty hands-on with that. But I've had these 10 people that I've been going hands-on every week. We've just kind of been real close in the process, and Fred is one of those. Fantastic player. He felt he'd gone backwards in so many areas, particularly with the kick drum, and I don't think he would mind me sharing this with you. It's something he and I have talked to, and yesterday, he also recently came to a camp, and so we were able to spend time together in person. And I just told him, I said, Fred, I think the bad news is your ears are getting better. You're maturing as a player. So things that okay, when I first got my drum set, I set it up and I sat down and I played the Sweater song by Weezer. And to me, I killed it. It was amazing. Probably the best thing I've ever played. I don't think I've played anything better than that. Like, in my mind, it was that good. The problem was, I didn't know what I didn't know. And my ears definitely could not tell if my snare was flaming with my kick drum, if my snare was flaming with my hi-hat. It could not tell the consistency with which the consistency of velocity that my strokes were on the hi-hat. It could not tell that my snare drum was all over the map when it came to the timing. Sometimes it's a little to the left, sometimes a little to the right, behind, ahead. My ears were not mature enough to hear all of that. But as we get better as players, our ears begin to mature. And what happens when we feel like we've gone backwards is, congratulations, you've become a better musician. You are hearing things on a deeper level than you could not hear before. The group I just came off the road with, it was comprised of fantastic musicians, every one of them, great musicians. And we had in-depth talks about timing, specific timing with where it was sitting. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, actually, is I put live BPM on because I wanted to see. I was like, wait a second, our timing, how is it? Where is it? And a live show, we were having swings of less than 1 BPM. If the song was at 79 BPM, we were going between 78.5 and 79.5. That was how close we were keeping it to being, right on. And I was really proud of that, right? But I could not have done that 15 years ago. My ears weren't developed enough. I didn't have enough experience with that. So if you find that all of a sudden things you used to be able to do, you can't do, this kind of thing, a big culprit could be that your ear has actually matured. And matter of fact, you're playing it the same as you always have. Unfortunately, you couldn't always hear how you were playing it. And so now our ears are telling us that things need to be cleaned up a little bit. And that's the detail work. That's where we get in. And, it's one thing to sweep a room. It's another to go to all the edges of the room and get the corners and get the baseboards and cobwebs on it. Like it's fine tooth. You're going through things with a fine tooth comb. And I believe that was what was going on with that particular student. And I told him so. I said, look, your ear is getting better. We can only play as well as we can hear. And so we don't often think about the development of our ear. Tim Buell, a good friend of mine, a staff teacher here at SDS and talented transcriptionist, killer drummer, we used to talk about all the time the speed of your hearing. The speed, you're only able to learn something up to the tempo you can hear it at. Many times when I'm playing a tempo I'm uncomfortable with, I'll spend a couple of days actually just playing eighth notes, playing simple patterns at that tempo. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get my ear accustomed to that tempo because maybe it's a faster tempo than I'm accustomed to playing. And maybe it's a drum and bass song or something like that. I had a session last year where I was going to play this drum and bass style track, and I, for the week before, set at that tempo just to get comfortable, feel like I could swim in those waters. And so that is something that could be happening. Your ear is maturing. So the first one, you're in the middle of the learning process, and that's just messy. Roads under construction. The second one is your ear is maturing. You're maturing as a player, and you are hearing things better than you used to hear them. That's a bonus. And so now we do the detail work. The third thing is you haven't been practicing enough. Look, life gets in the way. Look, I run a business. I got 3 kids. We have a home renovation going on right now. I have a wife that I like a lot and like to see her. I'm a musician. I've got gigs. I practice and I have hobbies. It's a busy life, and so sometimes we haven't spent enough time practicing, and it could be go through a 5 or 6 month period where you're practicing, but not as much as you used to, and some things are getting kind of rusty. And so that's just a real simple conversation you have with yourself. It's nothing to judge yourself with. It's like, okay, this is part of, this leg of the journey. I've been pretty busy. I've now noticed that. I'm going to fix that. And I don't suggest fixing it with, if you're only able to get 20 minutes in a day, I don't suggest setting these huge lofty goals of I'm going to put in 2 hours every day. Okay. Ease up, just ease up, rock on, Kennedy. You're headed for suicide there, in the practice sense. And so what you want to do is say, okay, I was practicing 20 minutes a day. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to set my goal of between 30 and 40 minutes a day. So you're upping it by 10 to 20 minutes instead of I'm going to do 2 hours. That's a daunting thing, 10 to 20 minutes. And then after you do that for a couple weeks, you'll say, okay, I've been getting 30 minutes consistently. I'm going to try for 40 to 50 minutes. And then you do that for a couple weeks. And before you know it, in a couple of months, you're back up to your old speed and you're practicing and everything's good. So that's the third place is you could be actually not putting enough time in on the kit. And that's okay. Just notice it and let's go about fixing it. The fourth one is an area of your playing has gotten rusty and you need to review some things. I have a pilot that's been in that one-on-one program with me. And we talk about, he had just gone through his yearly review. So every year he has to go through this review and basically they're testing him on a lot of basic knowledge to make sure that he has stayed sharp on those things. Most careers, you have to have CECs, continuing education credits. They want to know that you're staying brushed up on those things. Doctors are regularly evaluated. This is a regular thing. And so what we have to do is we have to evaluate our playing. After we've been playing for a very long time, it's very easy just to assume we learned something, and anytime we come back to it, we're just going to be able to play it immediately. I talked to an old teacher of mine. He was at Berkeley for many, many years, and he said, Stephen, I have to practice an hour and a half to 2 hours every day just to stay crisp and clean with the things I have to teach in my classes. Just to stay on track with, that's not self-improvement. That's just to keep all of that stuff, because some of those classes were really hard. And just to stay clean on all that stuff, on all that, be able to demonstrate it right at the drop of the hat, he had to put in that practice time just to do that. And so professionals and teachers do this all of the time. And what happens is, the gig I just mentioned that I was out for a year and a half with on the road, fantastic group, love the musicians. It was Southern rock, so I was not playing, Mahavishnu Orchestra. I wasn't playing Rush. I wasn't playing Slipknot. It was very specifically these wide, big open beats, big open drums, 24-inch bass drum, 8x14 snare, 14-inch rack, 16, 18-inch floor toms, gong drum, 22 inches, big, big, big. And some things went by the wayside. In that situation, some things that would go by the wayside would be maybe kick drum speed, right? I'm playing a kick drum that's wide open, 24 inches, it's big sounds, I'm not going to be playing a ton of doubles on that, a ton of triples, because they're not going to translate, especially when we're playing maybe a big arena or an amphitheater or something like that. Those things are not going to translate as well. And so you opt for other patterns that are traditionally in that music style. And that's what happened. I found that I need to come home and work on my kick drum a little bit because, the evenness of multiple notes, just due to how much time I was putting in playing a specific genre and tempo and all that stuff. Another thing that went by the wayside was some of my chops, my speed around the drums, because I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on my timing, sitting back in that pocket, making the other musicians comfortable. I was focused on delivering a really good show. Whereas other, let's say you're drumming for a thrash metal band, sitting in a wide open beat, groove is not the thing at the forefront of that, right? It should be, but it's not always, right? And so maybe some of that goes by being the ability to play at softer volumes, the ability to play slower tempos. Those may all go by the wayside. You have to brush up on those. So I've been doing this professionally since I was 15. And been playing since I was 14, right? So I've got a long time in this game, and there's regularly things I need to brush up on, right? There's areas of my playing, like let's say I got called for a Latin gig. Can I play? Yeah, sure I can. Do I want a heads up? I would like a heads up. Why? I want to go back through that material. I want to go back through and make sure the triggers are firing, brush up on a couple of things, my patterns, and understand, okay, well, this is what I'm doing in this situation. Okay, let's check out, the mambo, guaguanco, all of these, like make sure I remember everything in the traditional setting how I want to. And that's just a regular thing that as a professional you have to do. So there's always going to be things that you're going to need to go back and brush up on, and that's a normal thing in any job. They're going to be reviewing and making sure. So that's the fourth place, is just finding areas that need review. And one of the things I've done for this in my own playing is I will make specific routines or sets of songs that I can go through regularly that hit some of those pain points that maybe I'll get a little rusty on. One of those that I've gone back to for many, many years was taught by one of my first drum teachers. Is Alan Dawson's Rudimental Ritual. I was just talking with a student about it yesterday. I still go back to it. He said, what's a 10 to 15, well, he said 15, 20 minute pad routine that would work. And I said, oh, Alan Dawson's Rudimental Ritual, and you're like, Steven, you didn't write that. You got this drum school. Yeah, whatever. My knowledge is built on the knowledge of all the drummers that came before me. I would be remiss if I did not point students to Alan Dawson, a freaking foundational pillar of the drumming community, especially for a certain time. Tony Williams and so many others. Same thing with like Gary Chester and Gary Chafee, and I'm gonna miss Dom Famolaro, recently passed, and several other, Jim Chapin. I could keep naming names, and then my own personal teachers. I'm just building on what they did. I that's all I'm doing as a teacher. And so that's what I do with my students. So that's the fourth thing. So we've got in the middle of the learning process, a little messy. You're maturing as a player, your ear's getting better. And then we've got, you actually haven't been practicing enough. And then you've got some things that have become rusty and you need to brush those up. This fifth one is, some of you may be like, oh, Steven, I don't agree with that. This fifth one is, you have been playing in an environment that is below your own standard for your playing. I've always wanted to be the weakest player on the gig. I've always wanted to be playing with musicians that are better than me. I've always wanted to get better, right? And that's a different thing. If you're a more mature player and you're like, okay, we got this younger player, a newer player, and we're really trying to pour into them, and that player is putting in the work and really trying to come up and do the job. That's different. I found myself in situations where players have been playing so long, or they've been on the gig for a long time, they just didn't care, and they didn't pay attention to the details, and things were sloppy. And then the longer I played with them, the sloppier my playing got. Because what happened is, instead of their standards coming up to mine, my standards fell to theirs. Because there were 4 or 5 people on the stage, and I was the new one. I'm like, well, they don't care. Why do I need to care? We're getting the job done, still getting paid. Like, that didn't gel with me. And there was a very much a time in my career when I had moved to Nashville. I was playing downtown a lot, and some of the situations I was in, I remember coming home and talking to my wife, and I said, I can't take gigs for this person anymore because I don't know what kind of players are going to be on that gig, and I respect my playing more than that. I have a higher standard than some of these situations I've been put in. That's not a blanket statement about all situations in downtown Nashville. It's just some of the ones that I was finding myself in. So I'm very particular about who's on the gig these days, because I don't want my playing to fall to their standards. I want them to rise to my standards. I want us to move as a cohesive unit in the right direction. So you may be finding yourself in a situation where you're lowering your standards to those around you. What's that? Your net worth is your network is your net worth. It's like in the business and corporate world, that's always a catchphrase, but it's true with your playing too. If you want to be like other players, surround yourself with those better players. Don't surround yourself with players that are always worse than you, that don't have the stand. To me, they cannot be as good musicians, but if their standards are as high as yours, that's fine. It's the standards I'm concerned about. So anyway, those are the 5 areas that I would suggest you look at when you feel like your playing is getting worse. If I can ever do anything to help you, please just let me know. As well, I've got some free downloads for you. 30 Days to Better Doubles, 30 Days to Better Singles. We've got those in the show notes, and then there is a link to my online drum school with some more information. I would love to have you be a part of that. I'd love to have you come to an in-person camp if you wanted to. You can find all that stuff at the link below and on the website. But whatever you do, go practice. Email me any questions you got. help@stevensdrumshed.com. I'll see you in the next episode.